Hi, it's David. So there was a lot of requests for me to make a video about the lymphatic system and what you can do for self-care and self-treatment of your own lymph. So there's a lot of information, but let's see how it comes out. So lymphatic system collects the fluid that leaks out by osmosis, I think it is. It leaks out into the interstitial space and creates this kind of swamp in between the cells. And the lymphatic system sucks up that fluid, which has leaked out of the capillaries, and suctions it up through a series of all these capillary, rivulet, coming all these branches into a single trunk, the thoracic duct, where it dumps the fluid back into the heart, in the venous angle of the heart. So the lymphatic system is like a sister system to the blood, but rather than have the two-way, oxygen like coming and returning, it's just one way. It only comes back to the heart. It's through the bloodstream that the lymph system gets delivered to the cells and leaks out. There's also the lymph nodes, which are kind of these information station. They look like little labyrinths, and there's a lot of immune activity that happens in the lymph nodes. I'm sure everyone's experienced what it feels like to have a swollen node. Sometimes it's painful, sometimes it's not. It's the way of the body responding to its environment and the particles and things that it picks up. So it's generally a good thing when your immune system is active and responding. So the different sets of nodes are the cervical nodes in the neck. They're also kind of inside near the tonsils and stuff, but generally there's an area here called the water wheel and behind the ear as well, where people notice nodes a lot. And then there's the axillary nodes, which are inside the armpit, and there's the inguinal nodes, which are just in the groin right here. And so those are the superficial nodes, and then there's deeper nodes that are deep inside the pelvis and deep inside the abdomen. So there's a region here called the cisterna chyli, which is kind of a cluster of all of these deep nodes. They then connect into the thoracic duct, which is that final big turkey baster trunk that dumps into the heart. So the biggest way to stimulate the lymphatic system is by breathing, and we do that all the time. The diaphragm, as you inhale, the diaphragm drops. As you exhale, the diaphragm goes up. And so this pumping action gently squeezes and massages all of those nodes and rivulets in the cisterna chyli. And if you squeeze the lymphatic system anywhere along the whole circuit, because it's a one-way system, it'll affect the entire system. So it's pretty cool. You can just work one part and you get a systemic response. Sometimes if there's an injury, you don't necessarily want to work right at the injured spot, but you can actually work next to it where you're kind of sucking the fluid out from that spot. So that's a general strategy. So the very first thing to touch on about the lymphatic system is these points here. This region is called the supraclavicular watershed. So it's this area above the clavicles. And if I shrug my shoulders and dig my fingers in, I can kind of get my fingertips behind the clavicle, so you can feel that collarbone there. And the clavicle, the two clavicles join with the sternum here, so there's little joints there. And there's a point there that you can activate. In acupuncture, it's called kidney 27, is around this area. There's kind of a closer together against the sternum, and then you can go further apart. So if you massage in there, you can find some interesting tender points. So this close together point just underneath the clavicle where they join with the sternum, that is a master activator point. So my teacher Bruno Cicli, who I studied with the Cicli Health Institute and Lymphatic Drainage Therapy, he calls this the resonator points. And there's actually another pair of points right here's my pubic bone, and just here's my navel. And so it's kind of in between right about here, so about an inch above the pubic bone and an inch to either side. So these are the other sister resonator points. They're kind of above and below. And so if you hold these points, it's very activating for the parasympathetic system, and it increases the lymphatic flow. So you can hold it. You don't have to move around so much. If you are going to massage, it would probably be more of these upper points. And so it's already so relaxing just holding it. So I'm noticing my breath start to deepen. So this is an excellent relaxing parasympathetic point that you can stimulate with your hands. So generally the lymphatic system, because it's all watery, you want to touch it with the watery parts of your hand. So that would be these fatty, soft pads, but not so much with the bony parts or the fingertips, fingernails. It's very soft. So you imagine like you're a gecko, or I don't know, like you're walking on a waterbed, like cats do the thing with their paws. It's very much this watery feeling. And you'll notice as you stimulate, and even as you think about your lymphatic system, if you're sensitive and you tune in, you'll start to feel this watery feeling. And you might notice you have more saliva, you might swallow more, your eyes might be a little bit watering. And so that's a sign that your lymphatic system's getting stimulated. So the very first place that you always start with is the supraclavicular area. And so the best way is actually kind of doing it like this, where if you're doing it on yourself, just be careful that somebody doesn't think you're choking, because I've actually heard that happening. Somebody did this in public at an airport or something, and they got a Heimlich maneuver that was unwelcome. So just be discreet if you're doing this in public. So it's this kind of stretching the skin and releasing. So it's like a wave. It's this very watery wave, and it's mostly lateral along the surface. So I'm not digging in and pushing too hard. I'm stretching the skin. So if I were to do it on my arm, it's a very subtle engage and release. Engage and release. So if you imagine like you're at the beach and you hear the ocean waves going whoosh, it's kind of like this. And there's an actual resonant frequency rhythm of the body. It's called the Meyer wave, and it's a 0.1 hertz. It's 6 times per minute approximately, and it's a resonant fluid wave. It's also related to the vagus nerve, and maybe I'll share more about that in another video. So this very slow wave-like, I'm stretching and releasing the tissue. And then I move a little bit further out, stretch and release. So you can do 2 or 3 strokes on each place. And a little goes a long way. So you don't want to overstimulate your lymphatic system at first. So just be gentle and notice what's happening. So I can feel like I start to get drainage, I start to swallow more, this like feeling in the back of my throat and my nose, and so that's a sign that you've activated your lymphatic system. So that's a good sign. So again, going up the neck here, you can go behind the ears. So what I'm doing, so I started here, and then I moved out and up, and then you go back down, and you end where you started. So the idea is like if you were sweeping your house, you open the front door, you sweep it into a pile, then you get it in the dustpan, and you go back out the door and you dump. So here's the door that I opened, then I'm working away from the door, and then I'm working back towards it. So that's a general philosophy of how that works. Just from touching myself like that, I can feel the drainage starting to happen already. If you work the axillary node, so you open the door here, and then you start to come down. So there's this kind of V shape just above the navel, and then I would work it back and finish there. So I'm doing it a lot faster just for demonstration purposes. I think that's all the things that I want to share. Be sure you drink lots of water after you stimulate your lymphatic system. You might have to urinate. And if you do have swelling, lymphedema, you should really see a specialist about that, because that can be a very serious thing that needs more than just self-care. And also, don't do this if you're bleeding. It can exacerbate bleeding, so that's one of the contraindications. Also, if you have hypothyroidism or issues with maybe even pots or something, be very careful about touching your neck. So again, listen to your body, go slow a little, goes a long way here. Okay, thanks.